dealing with small plot research, right? And so with small plot research, we only have typically 4 rows at a time. So we made a smaller unit. Each of the inter-row applicators is about 32 inches wide because in Texas, in our cotton fields, we were about 40-inch spacing. So 32 inches wide each. And it's powered similar to most electrical weeders in that it's powered off the PTO of the tractor. You can see the generator and transformer hooked up to the back of the tractor there, and then the applicator is on the front. And so we're testing all kinds of we're doing all kinds of experiments and testing to try to see the feasibility of this tool. But for the sake of time and brevity, I'm just going to cover our sort of initial testing in cotton, looking at how this compares to sort of the gold standard inter-row organic or non-chemical weed tool, which is cultivation. So especially in Texas and other regions, organic systems often rely on repeated inter-row cultivation. And so what we wanted to look at is can inter-row electrocution be as effective as cultivation? And to test that question, we looked at treatments that had multiple travel speeds and multiple number of passes. And then we also had sort of a temporal or a time difference between one pass and the next. So what if we apply our pass today, and then we wait 3 days and apply our second pass, as opposed to applying both passes in the same day? And so all this is to see if how travel speed and number of passes influence efficacy as it compares to a non-treated control, as well as an inter-row cultivation pass. And you can see this is, as I mentioned, you can see the electrodes here guiding along the ground in this photo, and kind of an overhead shot of the applicator there. So yeah, I'm going to be real brief. This data is still being analyzed and collected as we speak, and we're testing it at multiple cotton growth stages, at multiple application timings, and across multiple locations. But here, I'm just going to show what we're seeing visually in the plots. I'm not going to go into any of the quantitative data, but just kind of the visual ratings. And starting off with the broadleaves. So this field actually had a good combination of Hophorn beam copperleaf, which is an annual broadleaf. We had Palmer amaranth and ivy leaf morning glory. Those were our predominant broadleaf weeds. And for the sake of time, I'm just pooling all those broadleafs together, all those broadleaf weeds. And they were about 4 inches at the time of application, so getting pretty large. But you can see across the x-axis we have our treatments, and then across the y-axis we have our visual control as a percentage from 0 to 100. And the good news is all treatments sort of performed exceptionally well. Even the faster travel speed, which was a concern. So our fastest travel speed was 3.5 miles an hour with the Zasso, which may not sound fast to most farmers, but when you're trying to steer that thing and prevent damaging the crop, it feels really fast. So 3.5 miles an hour was our fastest, and then 0.8 was our slowest. And then we, of course, had an inter-row cultivation treatment. Every treatment performed greater than 95% control. And the only really statistical difference we're seeing is between 2 passes of electrical weeding versus just 1 pass of cultivation. But again, those numerical differences are very minute. In a practical sense, they're probably not significant. They're not probably not. There's probably not a practical difference in control. But because the differences among our reps was so small, the analysis is showing that statistical difference there. But it's all greater than 95%. Very good control of broadleaves. Where the data gets a little more interesting is when we look at our grasses. And our grasses in this study were seedling Johnson grass, so not rhizomatous Johnson grass, just seedling Johnson grass. We also had Texas panicum and some other species, springletop millet, and some other species. But basically, when you look at the grass control, the real differentiation here is the travel speed. And that faster travel speed, whether you did 1 pass or 2 passes, significantly reduced grass control. Even when we combined 2 passes and spaced them out between 3 days, we were basically about 82% visual control. And if you compare that to the slower travel speed, which was above 95% control, and of course the tillage, which was greater than 95% control. So it appears that you really need to manage your travel speed if you're dealing with grasses. And, grasses are a common thing in organic and in every field. So that's sort of the limitation we're seeing with this tool. Moving into just some photos of our plots. This is a later timing. This is our mid-post timing of electrical weeding. On the left there, you can see the untreated control. And then the middle photo is our inter-row cultivation pass. We then have our slower travel speed at 0.8 miles an hour, one pass, and then our 3.5 miles per hour pass. And again, this is just visualizing what we're seeing with the data. Um, Faster travel speeds, there's a clear reduction in grass control. And um, we're going to dive into why that might be. There's obviously a big difference between grasses and broadleaves. Um, but essentially, with this technology, the limiting factor is the grass control. And here's just a quick video I wanted to show you guys. It's one thing to see photos, but here's kind of the applicator in action. Just, guiding along. This is a really early growth stage of our cotton. I think it was about the four-leaf growth stage. Um, but yeah, it kind of glides along the ground, and you want to make sure you either use GPS or that you're very careful when applying this to not run over your cotton. It's best to use a GPS guided system. So yeah, there we go. All right, so kind of wrapping up here, just very brief for the sake of time. Some of our main findings of the research so far. Again, this is preliminary findings and just kind of a snapshot of what we're seeing, but all electrical weed control treatments perform similarly to cultivation for broadleaf weed control. So that's good news, right? I mean, even at 3.5 miles an hour, which is really fast for this technology, we're seeing exceptional broadleaf control. I do want to mention that the broadleaves in this study were all annual broadleaves. We didn't test any perennial broadleaves. And so um, there's evidence to suggest that perennial species may be a little more difficult to control because they have more complex root systems and the electricity may not travel completely through the root system of perennial weeds. But for annual broadleaves, we saw exceptional control across all treatments. One thing I didn't touch on with a graph, but I want to mention is minimal cotton injury. The only time we did see injury was when we accidentally touched the cotton to the electrode. This is a shielded inter-row applicator, but just by accident or errors in application, we did accidentally run over or touch a few plants here and there. But there's no visible effects from any root contact. I know we got a lot of questions initially about what if that electricity is traveling through the roots of a targeted plant and potentially touching the roots of cotton. There is no indication on our data, based on our data, that there's any of that going on. The cotton is generally safe from this technology as long as you don't run it over. And then the important finding here is that travel speed did reduce grass control. With higher speeds, we saw reductions in efficacy overall. And so what this kind of tells us, at least from this early data, is this isn't a silver bullet, of course, right? There's going to be caveats and there's going to be trade-offs with this tool. If you have a high infestation of grass on your farm, you may want to consider slowing down. Conversely, if your predominant species are broadleaves and you're more concerned about managing annual broadleaves, there may be options to increase your speed and be more efficient with your application timing, overall application time. But again, I think we need to tease out this a little more. This study was kind of just the dipping our toes into this research, but really we want to look at a more broad treatment regime or broad spectrum of different travel speeds to kind of nail down optimum application parameters for this technology. But I think overall these findings are good findings, and it really gives promise for inter-row electrical weeding in row crops. But again, further data is being collected, analyzed, thinking about how does weed density influence control? What does it do to the soil microbes and earthworms? And how does plant and soil moisture impact efficacy? So those are all being looked at. I just didn't have time to go into them with you guys for today. But definitely stay tuned for more updates. You can follow me. I'll have my social media handles plugged at the end of this presentation of mine. And please give me a follow if you're interested in staying up to date on some of the research we're doing. And I just want to shout out, I was very brief on the information on electrical weeding for this talk. If you really want to learn more, Grow has an excellent article in their weed management toolbox that was put together recently. Here's a photo of the web page and how to find and navigate to find that page. And I just wanted to plug the Grow website for more information on electrical weeding. With that, I just want to thank you guys for letting me discuss a little bit about my research, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion. So I think we should move into our discussion. But thank you to every organization in my lab for making this research possible. It took a lot of work and a lot of time to get this tool delivered from Brazil to the US, get the studies established, and it wouldn't have been possible without these organizations and without my lab. But with that, let's kind of move into um, our farmer forum and actually talk with some growers who have much more experience with this tool than I do. I'm very excited for our talk. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll move into our farmer forum. All right. Emily, are you ready?
Yep, go ahead and take it away. Let's dive into the first questions, Ryan.
Okay. Do you want me to keep sharing and keep going through the
Nope,
slides? Oh,
nope,
okay.
I don't think so.
Awesome. All right. First question. We do have a question in the chat, and I'll save that one for the end. I kind of want to kind of dive into our and talking with our farmers here. So I'm going to start off just to have each farmer introduce themselves, kind of talk about your operation and what crops you grow and things like that. And I guess we'll start with the eastmost person. So we'll start with Aaron over in Maryland. So Aaron Cooper, please give us an overview of your farm.
Yeah, so I'm a certified organic grain farmer. I do about 450 acres. Um, let's see, I do corn, soybeans. Um, well, I'm doing cowpeas this year, barley, sorghum, um, green bean, a little bit of green beans, like fresh market green beans. So I have a feed business, so that's why I have some soy-free customers, I have some corn-free customers. That's why I'm growing some of the odd crops. But I can pretty much weed zap everything but corn out of those crops. I mean, I don't really do wheat or any of the small grains with it, but I don't get weeds in those that would need to be zapped. So yeah, I've been doing it. I don't know. I really started farming on my own or at my full-time job like 10 years ago, pretty much. We started transitioning land 15 years ago to organic. So got plenty of weeds, plenty of mistakes over the years. Um, now I have kind of have all the tools I feel like I need in my toolbox. But if I'd had those 10 or 15 years ago, my weed pressure would be way lower. But I've got a pretty good weed seed bank. So we're doing a lot of trips over the field to try to control it every year.
Great. Thank you so much. And Jim in Ohio.
Yes, thanks, Ryan. Cover about 350 acres here, all certified organic. This year we have corn, wheat, soybeans, and oil sunflowers. In the past, we've grown edamame that was harvested and shipped for freeze processing. And then we've grown canola as well. Um, so we started the transition about 8 years ago, 9 years ago now. Bought our own weed zapper. This is our fourth season with it, but had a custom operator come out a couple times and weed zap for us. The timing of it was not great. Always behind where we wanted the custom operator to be. We were hoping for the 1st of August and it would turn into the 1st of September. So it was time to take the plunge and look at buying one of our own. And when we share some pictures here in a bit, it finally made sense once we found this opportunity for our weed zapper. So yeah, happy to answer these questions.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for that overview. And it's cool to see such diversity between you two. And I think we're going to get a really good perspective of the weed zapper and its usage. So I guess again, we'll start in order with Aaron and go to Jim after. But what weed species are your biggest problems And historically, how did or do you manage weeds on your farm before trying weed electrocution?
It's probably my worst weeds or any pigweed. Palmer amaranth is worse than red root pigweed just because it grows about 3 times as fast, it seems like. So it's definitely the first one I got to get out there and zap. Um, we have a little bit of foxtail. It's not too bad. The zapper kind of works on that. It eventually kills it after a couple times. What else? I mean, like Jimson weed, I have some of that, and and cockleburr's a really bad one this year for some reason. I guess we had a lot of rain early, and the cocklebur loved it. So that one's a tough one because it doesn't really grow much higher than the soybeans. So that's always a challenge. We try to you got to get out there a certain time to be able to get it at the right time, to not kill the soybeans. I guess before I had the zapper, I think I've had it about 5 years. We would try to hand pull weeds, but that just got out of control on this many acres. So we had to get good at the zapper. But I mean, early weed control was important. We right now I finally have a tine weeder that's decent. So that's making a difference this year, kind of figuring out how to use it correctly and everything. And I have a good cultivator. Like I say, if I had had all this stuff, years ago, it would be not to say I could get by without the zapper, but it would be a lot better. I could probably make less trips with the zapper if I had had all the correct tools. Just seems like 10 or 15 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of knowledge flowing around about organic cultivation.
True.
So,
All right, Jim.
Yes. So we've had the Zapper for this is our fourth season with it, but our big thing is starting with a stale seed bed when we plant, making sure that really nothing's growing out there the day we plant, doing whatever we need to for tillage up until the day we plant. And then the day after we plant, we're hoping to be in the field every third or fourth day with a rotary hoe or a tine weeder. This year, just the conditions were perfect, and we got a nice rain after planting, which led to a nice crust on top of the soil. The rotary hoe worked better than ever before. I have one picture that's pretty hard to make out, but if anyone ever really wanted to see it, I'm happy to share it. Where there was about 10 or 15 feet where the rotary hoe was not in the ground yet, and to the inch, you can see just a massive difference in weed pressure there a month, 3 to 4 weeks later. Then we have four different types of cultivators on the farm, just being ready to attack in different modes. Different sweeps on different cultivators work better on different weeds, right? If we have a field that has a lot of grass in it, I know what I want to do to attack that. If we have Canadian thistle growing, I know what I want to do to attack that. But really, the three big weeds that I battle consistently are common foxtail, Canadian thistle, and giant ragweed. So my farm actually is called Thistledown Farms because my great grandparents battled Canadian thistles 80 years ago, right? I'm probably not going to be the one in the family to totally eliminate those. Common foxtail, the rotary hoe and the tine weeder make a much bigger difference, I would say, than the weed zapper. We're hoping to have absolutely the minimum amount of foxtail out there possible by the time we weed zap. And then giant ragweed is really just a common issue in my area overall. A lot of folks battle like Palmer and those. No, we don't really have that too bad yet here in Northwest Ohio, but we do have giant ragweeds, and they will be 14 feet tall if you give them the opportunity. That being said, boy, nothing works better on them than the weed zapper, right? And it's hard to even imagine or comprehend unless you've seen it in person. But if you make one pass through the field, through the giant ragweed, by the time you turn around and start heading back the other direction, those ragweeds are already doubled over and starting to die. It'll take a week or two or three before they're really brown and totally crispy, but they get annihilated by the weed zapper.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm gonna for this next question. Jim, you kind of touched on it already, which is perfect to transition to, but we'll ask Aaron. So, are there any synergies you notice where you integrate your Zapper with other technology? Like, do you find combining tactics with some sort of tillage tool for one species and then coming back with the Zapper for another? Is there any synergism you're seeing or benefits to combining tools?
Um, I mean, not really. I mean, we're just, getting whatever weeds get over top of the crop with a zapper, and then, we're doing I guess if we, a lay-by cultivation when we, the crop's almost too big to get through it's going to be soybeans with the zapper, or with the cultivator, and then we're coming back with the zapper after that, or possibly before that too. So, depending on the weed pressure, we're probably doing like 3 trips with the zapper or something. Like this is going to be a 3 or 4 trip year in some fields. Just a crazy year. I don't know for weeds. So, but yeah, I don't know about any synergy. It's just every tool has its place, has its timing. So I mean, they all need to be used. Tine weeder early on, row crop cultivator next, then the zapper, and then still the row crop cultivator, and then the zapper again. It's um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I think you guys may have touched on it a little bit, but kind of go in a little bit into more detail. What was the reasoning for choosing the weed zapper? You know, what was the main, and we'll start with Aaron again and we'll move to Jim. But what was your reasoning behind choosing a zapper?
Well, we had seen another fellow, organic farmer I know had one, and we talked to them and saw how much success they had with it. And I was getting to the point it was just the weeds were just getting worse and worse. We were getting more of a weed seed bank and no way to control them later. We'd have to like almost wait for frost to harvest. They were kind of that bad. So we are just trying to reverse the weed seed bank and start knocking it back. That's the main reason.
Yeah, Jim, how about you?
Yeah, good question. And so the first couple of years, we did a decent amount of hand weeding on a couple fields, and it was miserable and horrible. And I'm glad I was like 22 years old at the time with a bunch of 22-year-old friends, because even at age 30 now, I probably would die, right? But the other thing we saw is we did have a friend that owned one, had good success much like Aaron, I had a couple fields that were just getting worse and worse and worse. The giant ragweed, I mean, you'd lose 10 acres to giant ragweed once they got established. So the weed zapper made a ton of sense for that. And then we also thought that there was pretty good potential for custom work in our area. There weren't really the closest zapper was about 2.5 hours away, pretty close to Columbus, Ohio. So there wouldn't be much competition. That's something that we've had. It's disappointed us how little custom work there's been, but that's okay. And so it was just one more tool in the toolbox to increase our timing and our ability to get after these weeds a little bit. So Emily has shared the screen. I think everyone can see it. A picture of my weed zapper. So that is the very first day it arrived back at my farm, back in July of 2022. So unlike most of the weed zappers, mine is actually mounted on a high boy sprayer. And when we saw one that was mounted on a high boy sprayer, it dawned on us that it would be a pretty good opportunity for custom work, for a bunch of reasons. So there's a whole second engine on the zapper. So if you can see that large aluminum box where the spray tank would probably sit, that is actually a 400 horsepower Cummins engine that runs a big belt directly to the generator. So there is no power lost going through the trans or running oil pumps or anything like that. It is a direct drive of a whole lot of horsepower sending out electricity to the front boom. And with that, we did think that the high boy sprayer chassis would provide us the opportunity to do some different crops. We have some folks in this area that raise a bunch of peppers. There's quite a bit of tomato production. So the theory was that with the hydraulically adjustable tread width, we would be able to accommodate some of those different row spacings and things like that for custom work.
Wow, that's really neat. It's neat seeing a self-propelled unit like that. And how wide is the front?
Yeah, so the boom on it is still 40 feet, which is still pretty common for tractor mounted ones. One of the big determining factors when we bought what we did, we don't have a track. We're on 30 feet. We plant 30 feet, cultivate 30 feet, but we do not have a tractor big enough here on the farm to run a 30-foot weed zapper. So by the time we would have looked into buying a bigger tractor and the weed zapper itself, it was actually more economical to go with the sprayer chassis and the whole setup like you see in the picture.
So, yeah, real quick, we're kind of touching on a next question, and we'll move into Aaron real quick after this. But how many acres can you cover a day with this gym?
Ryan, that's a really good question. And the answer is it's got more to do with me getting sleepy and drowsy in the afternoon than the actual. But I'm going 3 to 3.5 miles an hour. So you're covering, um, a lot of times I'm only running on 30 feet for my crops. So you're covering 9, 10 acres an hour. If you stay at it, you can cover 60, 70 acres in an afternoon pretty decently.
Wow. Do you mind sharing how much that self-propelled unit cost, or I know the Zapper, they sell a self-propelled unit. So what's the cost of this thing?
Yeah, happy to share that. So I actually sourced the sprayer chassis and then sent it to the old school manufacturing for the production part of it. The um, the weed zapper components on it at the time were about 115,000, and the sprayer chassis I bought for 30,000. So with everything, I think we're at like 140. 140 some thousand with everything there. But one caveat is, and Emily and I spoke just briefly about this yesterday, there aren't many more $30,000 sprayer chassis available that are worth anything, right? I kind of stumbled into this one by luck. And so you start adding 60, $70,000 in for the sprayer chassis, which is realistic, 70, $80,000. Now it's a real big expense all of a sudden. That extra 40, $50,000, major increase. And truthfully, I'm sure those weed zapper components have not gone down in the last 4 years in price too. So I don't know what they would cost now.
Okay. And Aaron, do you mind sharing a little bit about your Zapper setup and dive into a little bit of details about how efficient it is for you and what the cost was like and things?
Yeah, so we bought it's supposed to be a 6 row, so 15-foot pipe is what it came with. I think it was 42,000 back 5 years ago. I'm sure that's gone way up with everything. And so I was running the 50. You can just go out and buy a 20-foot pipe like at the um, plumbing supply store. So I changed to a 20-foot pipe and was overheating the generator a lot. It was just kind of hard on the tractor. This year I'm back to a 15-foot pipe, and it seems to be about right. It seems to be a little better. And we're running it on since we didn't buy you can buy a front hitch like a cheaper front hitch from Old School for any tractor. But we already had the loader tractor, and I just bought the 3-point adapter for the it's got like the Euro quick hitch on the loader. I just bought the 3-point adapter for the to go to the weed zapper toolbar. And then run the pipe. You have to hook it at hooking and unhooking is kind of a pain on a tractor. Probably takes, I could probably do it in a couple hours, but it's not, you gotta maybe a little less, but you gotta run all the wires and make sure everything's hooked up right and zip tie a bunch of stuff. Make sure it's not going to interfere with the steering with the tires. I've caught a harness in the tire before, and that was fun. Had to order a new harness. I tried to butt connect it together, and that was a mistake. Had some grounding issues with that, and actually caught a tire on the Zapper on fire because of that. So I since ordered a new harness. That happened last year. Um, and but everything's working well on it this year. Um, yeah, so yeah, we're running the 15-foot pipe right now. I've even added extra grounding coulters on it. I even drag a chain behind the hitch on the drawbar on the tractor just to have extra grounding. Um, so it is a downside to take my biggest tractor and hook the Zapper to it and tie it up for a few months. But we use that tractor to do a lot of tillage early on. And then we have another, tractor just a tiny bit smaller, that's kind of been doing a lot of double, triple duty since the Zapper got hooked up. It's now the little bit smaller tractor is my tillage, planting, and cultivator tractor. So it's really getting some hours on it because this tractor's on the Zapper. So that's it would be nice to have a self-propelled in hindsight, but I don't have enough acres and I don't have anybody close by I would do custom work for, so it never really made sense to get a bigger one for me. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that info. Um, I think we're gonna jump ahead real quick, or I mean, actually, let's touch on and maybe Jim can go now. Have you had any issues with maintenance? Is it pretty high maintenance, or has it been pretty robust and kind of minimal maintenance to maintain the unit?
Yeah, Ryan. Really good. Probably the most important question regarding my weed zapper because we have had a horrible um, string of luck with just a ton of issues. So got it back home from Missouri, took it out, ran 30 acres, and the entire inside of the aluminum box was covered with oil, just a great coating of it, oil everywhere. So there was a seal that was out of the engine that ran the weed zapper. Um, had just a ton of different little issues the first year. It, Admittedly, some of it was like stuff that, damn, why didn't we think of doing it a little differently? Um, but I'm also going to say that like the first Model T Fords, I'm sure had plenty of issues too. So, and I bring that up because when I received mine, I think there were only about 10 of them in the country mounted on high boy sprayers. It was still a learning process and they were working through a bunch of different questions, bunch of different kinks in their process. Um, a couple of years ago, we had a local diesel shop do a ton of work on it. And since then, it's been a lot better. But the next question on the whole sprayer chassis is I guess these wheel motors are usually only good for about 5,000 hours. Each wheel motor is about $5,000 to $7,000 on that sprayer, right, to rebuild. So we're pretty close any day now. Unfortunately, those wheel motors could go out and we are dead in the water. For as much as Aaron's bummed that his biggest tractor is mounted on the weed zapper, well, at least if you really needed to, you could probably go find another tractor. As compared to me, there is no backup option on exactly what to do if that chassis goes down. Um, there, so as far as maintenance, common maintenance, no, it's been pretty good. Just the different kinks of taking a 25-year-old sprayer chassis, putting a 40-something-year-old diesel engine on top of it, and then trying to get all of that stuff to work with electronics on it has been a lot of challenge and a lot of downtime and a lot of money.
So, Aaron, how about you? You kind of touched on the issue with the wheel and a couple of other things, but as far as the not self-propelled Zasso or Zapper, how did that work?
Yeah, we really, I'd say almost zero maintenance. There's just nothing besides stupid things like me not zip tying the main wire away from my steer tires. These newer tractors with a narrower frame, the tires really steer really sharp and they can cut in. You don't have much room in the middle of the tractor to hang this wire. You got to make sure it's dead in the middle of the tractor. If it's off by a foot or something, it could a tread could grab it and yank it off, which is a real problem. Um, but otherwise, yeah, it really, I mean, it's greasing it every 10 hours, a few fittings, and it's not a whole lot to it. Um, Making sure I guess the terminal end of the wire that screws onto the pipe is, making sure that we've had to so we added like a piece of black plastic pipe over it because if you zap on a dewy morning, that wire coating will get some electric going onto it and it'll kind of eat away at the coating, burn it off. So we've had to like make sure we have even better conduit, just a piece of plastic water pipe slid over top of it where those dewy weeds could hit it. Um, and then we just electrical tape everything off, zip tie it tight, and so there are few little things like that. But yeah, it was kind of pretty much ready to go when we got it. I mean, there's every now and then there'll be um, a wheel sensor that needs to be replaced or a wire gets chewed, just kind of worn out by hitting crops or weeds. And you have to replace the wire, like a little piece of harness or the sensor itself, because it has these wheel speed sensors that have to work. If you're not getting, a 0.5 mile an hour wheel speed, it won't let you start the machine up. It's a safety feature. So that's been an issue here and there, but just need to keep an extra sensor on hand, or they'll overnight one pretty quick to you too. But I'm running 5 miles an hour. I don't know with mine, and I'm covering about 7 acres an hour. But again, I'm going 15 feet at a time, so I'm trying to maximize the speed. I will slow it down, if I come upon a patch of nasty grass or something that I want to knock out better. Or I sometimes with grass, I'll even change because it has three different voltage settings. Generally early on when the weeds are really vegetative and it's been really damp out, I get too much conductivity, if that makes any sense. Just when it's moist out. And we have to set it on the lowest voltage setting so I don't overheat the generator or bog the tractor down. Because mine's old enough, apparently the new ones have some kind of software that can you know, reduce the power to the generator or the generator's pulling when they get into heavier weeds or lots of conductivity. But mine's the original software, so I don't have any of that. But right now I'm running the kind of the middle setting. But if I'm coming up to a patch of grass, I might on the fly you can change it to the high voltage setting and slow down or something and get those. But I mean, if you're running that high voltage setting all the time, my generator is gonna overheat. It's just and sometimes I got into some bad cocklebur this year, and I had to. It was lots of moisture in the cocklebur, lots of conductivity. The generator was overheating, so I'd have to sit at the end of each row and let it cool down on some passes. This was like fields where the deer had eaten the soybeans down and the cocklebur just got ahead of it. That's not a normal field, but I had a lot of deer damage early on this year that caused the cocklebur to get ahead of the beans. So there's always something. It's not like, I can't imagine being a custom weed zapper. I'm sure you'd see all kinds of things that you'd have to deal with out
Yeah.
there.
I mean, that's a perfect segue into our next kind of question. And, um, and we'll start with Jim, but what are the limitations of weed electrocution that you guys are seeing? I know, Aaron, you just mentioned when you see a nasty patch of grass, you sometimes slow down or you change the settings. So where does this work and where does it not work? And is there any improvements you think you could implement that would help with that? So, Jim, let's start with you.
So a couple of starting off with the custom work that I have done, I've had several folks in the area ask me to kind of go around the field edges where maybe the even on a conventional field where the commercial sprayer didn't get quite close enough to the edge because they didn't want to burden the ditches off or something like that. I've gone around several field edges. It's amazing how many deep holes you will find with the grounding coulters on this thing. It seems like you're constantly hitting some hole in the hole or a low spot with the ground coulter, which then leads to the entire boom like shifting, and you get worried that the metal bar is going to break. And so I actually have the designs made to move the grounding coulters behind the drive wheels for the sprayer chassis. It's just going to be 10 grand to do that, and so that wasn't on in the budget this year. um, Other actual limitations for in the actual crop, obviously you can only get the weeds that are at the canopy or above, right? And so when I'm in my own field, it doesn't feel as bad because I know I can come back out and zap some more later on, right? But with my um, custom work that I've done, it feels really crappy to know that there are weeds just below the canopy, and this farmer in a week is going to see them come through and think, oh, well, Jim didn't really do his job. They're still out there. And no, I did everything I can. It's just that you have to understand what the limitations are. The video here that Emily's sharing right now is view from the seat of my weed zapper. One big benefit of the weed zapper that I have on the sprayer chassis is my vantage point compared to a tractor mounted one. And Aaron, I'm sure you'll talk about it, but I am looking straight down on the crop and I am constantly adjusting the height of that boom to be as close to the crop as possible. I think the sprayer mounted one is got some big benefit in that scenario.
Yeah, that's the issue because mine's on a loader frame and it's a fairly good visibility loader frame because I used to run it on an old loader with a John Deere loader and it was even worse visibility. So yes, I'm constantly adjusting with a loader joystick, the height of the tool, we're actually using the cylinders that would run the bucket for the loader is our tilt cylinder for the boom. And that works really well. It's just I can kind of look through the loader and maybe see the outer two rows or whatever. So it is difficult to see. It would be really nice to be reversed, have a reverse tractor or something like what Jim has. But we use what we have. So I feel like I do a pretty good job. It's much easier in big beans, like where you can actually raise the air seat on the tractor and get really high, and then you can actually see over the hood and the loader, and then you can see but I mean, I'm working in small beans there in that photo, trying to get in early. So you really have to look on the outside on that one. It was easier when I was running the 20-foot pipe. I could see, the outer rows better. But I'm planting and cultivating and time weeding on 30 foot on 12 row. So the 15 actually works better to match, a 12 row because you're up and back. You've done one planter pass. You don't have to worry about the guest rows and all that. With the 20 foot, I was like coming into the guest rows and I'd be running over beans where the guest rows weren't quite. I'm not on RTK or anything, so the guest rows could be off, and then you might run over beans and miss something or um, so. So yeah, I think I'm going to stick with a 15-foot pipe, even though it's takes more time, but I'm getting way less generator overheating and it just matches everything better for me.
Yeah. Hey,
And I
Aaron,
can run
Aaron, oh,
5 miles
sorry.
an hour okay. So
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I just have a quick question from the chat I think would be interesting to answer while you're on the topic. Why did you need to add an extra grounding chain on top of the stock ground contact coulters? So why do you need that? Why do you think adding that extra ground chain is better?
well, the chain's kind of a afterthought. It's just an easy thing in case for some reason um your coulter's jumped out of the ground when you're still contacting weeds, that grounding chain would let in theory, let it would help you ground the machine still. There'd be something grounding your tractor and not the tires. Because
Okay.
I do get a lot of speckling like on my rim, my tractor tire rims, especially the rear ones, like where the paint is burned around the edge. And when I had my wiring harness issue where I made the dumb mistake to butt connect everything myself, and I apparently the ground had come apart or something. getting little burn marks on my like fairly brand new tractor tires. And then I had the one tire on the Zapper catch on fire, which the Zapper tire is not any. I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't really need the tires on it anyway, just for storage. Um, but having the extra grounds, I'm still getting a little bit of that speckling on the rims, and I think the owner of Old School said that you see that some, but I think I have a little more than most people, and I don't really know why, but that's why I've added extra grounding coulters just to, eliminate, more grounding issues, I guess. So,
Okay. So we're getting up to we have about 10 minutes left until the Q&A, the more intense Q&A session. And I think this is we're pretty good transition into what you guys were talking about earlier, but kind of let's try to be like brief, but have you guys noticed any measurable differences in your weed pressures? So have you noticed any species shifts, or have you reduced your overall weed densities since using the weed zappers? And Jim, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Aaron afterwards.
Yeah, so I do not have any great analysis on whether my weed pressure is better, but what I do have is a 1979 combine that I harvest soybeans with. And so, like, the rotor reverser is me standing on the end of a wrench, turning the rotor backwards. And I have not had to stand on that wrench in almost 2 years now. So, whether the weeds are totally gone or just at least dried down. Aaron mentioned earlier waiting till frost to harvest soybeans. Um, I it, at least I'm not standing on the end of that wrench consistently, turning it backwards.
I'd like to say I've reduced the weeds, but man, this year they're bad. I don't know. I'm sure we have. I mean, it's and like some of the fields that we transitioned more recently where we had the zapper, I would say there's definitely less weed pressure in those. Just because we were able to clean them, keep them clean. There's still weeds in them, but they're way better than the fields that we transitioned before we had the zapper. Um, so I specifically have one field that like a 7-acre field we transitioned late because of a research study. And anyway, that one is by far the best field this year. So I mean, I'm attributing that to having the zapper in there a couple of years of soybeans to control weeds, because the research strips definitely didn't help control weeds. I know that. So that field should be my worst, but it's not. So
Yeah, and I think this question kind of ties into that a little bit. So, in terms of density, do you guys notice density influencing efficacy? Like if you have a big, thick patch of grasses or a thick patch of broadleaves, if you have a high density running through that patch, do you notice that it may take slower travel speeds or more passes to kill all the weeds in that high density environment? And Aaron, we can go ahead and start with you.
Uh, yeah, if you have enough horsepower and to do it, and that doesn't bog the zapper down so much that it cuts out on you, it'll trip out if it's the generator speed goes too low or whatever. Um, yeah, if you had a lower horsepower tractor, I think you're going to run into that a lot in those bad patches. But if you have enough horsepower, or what Jim has, he's got plenty of horsepower because he's got a separate engine. You probably aren't going to see that much of a problem. But if it's a real, a long patch of it, if it's just 20 feet, you're probably going to get through it. If it's around a manure pile or something, I've got some bad patches, and I will see some weeds that make it through the first zapping on those, and I'll clean them up on the second zapping.
How about you, Jim?
Yeah, and my experience is maybe not that the weed patch is better or worse because of how much is out there, but rather this only works on plants that are contacted by the bar, right? So if um, maybe if I'm going through a big giant patch of giant ragweeds, there's enough, I'm going to call it insulation from taller weeds that the smaller ones might not even get touched there. Or if they do, it does not get touched well. So maybe that's the bigger holdup. Rather, yes, I have plenty of horsepower. There are still times where my system gets overloaded going through a big enough patch, um, because it's all proportional, right? Like sometimes I'm running 40 feet wide. It's just a lot of pull. But I think the insulation from other weeds is the bigger determining factor.
Oh, that's a great point. That's something that should be considered is insulation or plants overlapping each other. And yeah, excellent, excellent, guys. And as we're wrapping up here before the actual Q&A bit, it's important we talk about safety. And I know Aaron talked about catching a wheel on fire, which kind of sounds scary. So we'll start with Aaron, but talk about your safety protocol. What are the dangers of this technology, and what do you guys do to prevent potential injury or harm? What are some of the safety protocols you guys deploy?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the grounding is the number one thing. You just got to make sure all your wires are in good shape and all the ground, everything to the grounding coulters is hooked up correctly, and um, just make sure that you're not playing around and pulling the coulters out of the ground while you're still zapping, because it's not going to stop right away. You can definitely, I've had that happen. I've actually caught a tractor step that had a little piece of rubber on it. I burned that off one time when I went into a field that was really uneven from the edge of the road, and the coulters were in the ground enough to get it started, but then they hopped out of the ground because the tractor moved, and jumped it out of the ground when it hit a big weed, and there was weeds touching the step, and it just, yeah. So you just got to go real slow when you start off and make sure everything's in the ground. And if you know you're going to come upon some holes or something where things are going to jump around, you just got to slow down and or try to avoid that area. Even like, I don't know, one of my farms there's a guy with a pacemaker that lives in a house right by it, and that, I've read that is a concern. I tell him just stay, well away from me when I'm around. If he's out there and like bare feet in the dewy grass, I would worry about that, even if he's more than 50 feet away. But you definitely don't want any, you know, animals or humans within 50 feet of you. That's kind of the number they give, but I would tend to err on the side of more distance than that, especially if it's dewy or something.
Yeah.
And I guess also field fires are a concern on the edge of the field. So you gotta I've had smoldering fires start, so you got to get off and stomp them out, or carry a. I mean, we keep a fire extinguisher on the machine, but I guess you could have you know, some water or something you could put out little fires. It's not as bad as like a row crop flamer for starting fires, but it definitely, if there's dry material around the edge, it can start smoldering. And if it's a hot, windy day, you could have a problem pretty quick.
Yeah. So I'll ask Aaron, and then Jim, you can include this too. But Dave Campbell is asking, how long are the coulters that help with the grounding on your machine, Aaron?
How long is that? Or
Yeah, I think how long, like, are they adjustable, and how
oh,
deep, and yeah.
yeah, they're adjustable. So like we want to shorten them up as much as possible when in really small crops. You want to kind of run everything as short as you can. And then we can, when the beans are, the last zapping, I guess you would go through, you're going to probably raise them all the way up. Like right now, I've got mine somewhere in the middle. There's probably, 20 inches of adjustment, 2 feet somewhere in there, from top to bottom. So. But there's also a grounding pipe on the toolbar that helps do grounding as it brushes the crop. So ideally you would want that pipe brushing the crop to give you extra grounding. Like in a really small crop, if I'm going to go in really early, it's not always possible. But that's one reason you want to run it as short as you can without knocking the crop over or breaking it off.
Yeah, Jim, how about you? What's your safety protocol? Have you had any issues, and how long are your coulters on that machine?
Yep. So safety protocol, I actually have there's a safety switch on the door, like the cab door of my machine. If it opens up, it shuts off automatically. I like obviously there's still electricity. It doesn't happen instantly, right? So it's still dangerous. But then the other part is that I actually, if I'm doing custom work, I pretty well always have my right hand man ride with me in the buddy seat, because going around the field edge, it doesn't seem like 40 feet would be that wide, but going around a telephone pole or watching for a random steel fence post that marks the boundary, um, there have been a couple of them where you're like, whoa, that was really close to being a big problem. And then the other part is talking with folks about, hey, stay way back of this thing. I don't know, Aaron, you mentioned like it's better to be further back than close because you don't know how close is safe until it's going to be too late, right? Like you're gonna if you do get a zap from this thing, it's going to be game over. So you'd hate to guess incorrectly that 51 feet is an okay number. So just staying way back, really, it does scare me pulling into other people's farms because it's new technology that's really cool to see, right? But that leads to a dangerous position for other folks. So, no, I have not had an issue yet. Yes, I have had a couple smoldering fires like Aaron, but all in all, we've been okay. Actually, one really random thing, my sprayer chassis is unbelievably loud. So, like, I was going past a pedestrian on the road, and like they got really scared, and like, I mean, that was just a really random issue too of just what all happens with this big chassis.
Yeah, and I think real quick, Tosh asked in the chat, is there any lockout, tagout, or safety equipment that comes with the Zapper? I think Aaron mentioned a software, maybe Jim, you mentioned a software, but besides that automatic door shut off, is there anything else that comes with the unit for safety?
Yeah, so on my system, and I think it's on the tractor mounted ones as well, but there is a seat pad that goes you have to sit on for it to engage. But then it's a little scary because with all of the work that had to be done to mine, I mean, you have a engine running directly to this generator. And if folks are trying to diagnose what's wrong with the engine, well, the generator is still turning. There is not great lockout procedure on mine because you know there is no PTO switch. Once you start the big engine, that generator is turning. I don't know. I don't know if Weed Zapper has come up with some different safety protocol for that, but that's what's going on with mine.
Yeah, mine, I just turn the PTO switch off if I need to go diagnose ground speed sensor or something. I can keep the console or the touch screen turned on. And of course, it gets really unhappy with me that I got out of the seat, but I have the generator off. There's no power. I mean, besides a 12 volt going through the console and everything, there's a 12 volt that runs off the tractor that runs a little cooling fan in the generator cabinet, but there's nothing going to the pipe or anything when I mean, you have the 12 volt running the little sensors, but so you can kind of spin the coulter and adjust the sensor. It has a little light on it if it's when it's to show that it's working. If the light's not blinking as you spin that coulter, then you need to adjust the wheel sensor or something else is wrong. So yeah, every now and then I got to get off and troubleshoot something like that, but I definitely turn the PTO off so I know I'm safe.
Awesome. Yeah, those are great insights. And it's good to hear that you're generally, there's a little caution, but I mean, overall, you guys feel relatively safe when you're operating it, and there hasn't been any
Yeah, Ryan, I
catastrophe.
I'd
Yeah.
acknowledge that like the first year having it, I did not feel safe. Because you don't know, right? And I remember examples of when it was at the local diesel shop getting this stuff worked on that like how do we know that there's no stray voltage whatsoever coming off of this generator or something along those lines. So I feel better now, but the first year or two, no, I did not feel great about it.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, and I think everyone would share that feeling, and I definitely did with my unit testing it on our farm here. But we're kind of coming up on time for the Q&A, and I think you guys did an excellent job and answered the questions well, and we were even able to answer some of the questions, in the moment, which I thought was great. But I think, now I'm gonna kind of read off some of the questions by our audience, and I really encourage if you guys and gals in the audience have more questions, please send them to us via the chat, and we'll try to get to them as best as we can. There are a few that were marked as answered that I kind of want to double back on real quick. So, One is, what about moisture on a foggy morning? Like, do you guys see any better control or worse control when the plant material is wet? Is it less safe when the material is wet? Aaron, we can start with you.
I guess the like I was talking about the insulation on the electric wire going to the copper pipe, it can be an issue if there's a lot of wet weeds or plants brushing it. You can get arcing onto that moisture onto the conduit, and it can burn the conduit off. So we've had to just put a piece of 1 inch water pipe over it, and that's solved that problem. Um, but I think I don't know. I can zap on a dewy morning. It doesn't seem to be a problem. I've heard if it's actually raining, your most of that electric is going to run through the water on the outside of the plants. So I don't zap in the rain. If it's a light rain and just a passing thing, I'll keep going or I'll take a break. But yeah, if it's actively raining, I don't think it sounds like you're not doing a whole lot. That's what I've been told, but it doesn't seem to be a problem with dew so far.
All right. Jim, do you have anything to add or
Uh,
is it clear?
I don't get in a big rush to go out in the morning. If I start at 10, 11, probably 11 o'clock, that's a pretty good start on the day for the weed zapper. So drink my tea, give it time to warm up, and just let the dew burn off.
Okay, excellent. All right, we got to kind of to get some of these through. We're going to rapid fire them, so to speak. So, but how have you guys observed any difference in control or effectiveness when zapping rhizomatous weeds or perennial weeds, especially regarding regrowth from rhizomes? So, if you guys have any perennial weeds you're dealing with, Jim, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I have Canadian thistle, and it burns them off, but they're still there the next year.
Yeah, I would. Sorry. I would say I have a one patch of Johnson grass that I don't have it too bad in the farm, but the one patch I have is hold on, let me get this dog. Come here, come here, come here. It is it'll I try to zap it a few times in the year, but it doesn't kill it, but it definitely sets it back, so it won't set seed anyway that year. So that's a yeah, that's the one perennial I deal with.
Yeah, and kind of tying into that, Tosh asked, what about woody species? I don't know if on the field edges or anything, if you guys have dealt with some woody species growing, black locust or anything like that. What kind of control are you seeing? Jim, we'll start with you if you have any experience with that.
Yeah, yeah, real quick. Even things like lamb's quarter that grow in the field, by the time September 1st rolls around, they're actually woody enough that the weed zapper does not work well. Does not. It might kill them, but there's not enough moisture in it for them to go away. Right? They'll still be there at harvest.
So just real quick, I want to jump on that. You're saying there's not enough moisture in the plant at that
Yep.
time
Yep.
because moisture equates to conductivity, basically.
Yeah, and then the other part is that it equates to shriveling down and going away by harvest, right? So a high moisture plant, there's so much moisture that once it dies, it shrivels down so much that you're not dealing with nearly the biomass at harvest.
Awesome. What about Aaron? What about you? Any woody species? Is it a similar?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the last zapping in the season, I mean, any pigweed can be pretty woody and you're just kind of setting it back. Maybe you keep it from setting seed or something if one, but usually I zap 2 or 3 times in a season anyway, so I'm not I mean, there are some woody ones, but it's not like I wait. I guess if you were a custom harvester and you're a custom zapper and you were going in like once in a season and you didn't get in until late August, you could be hitting a lot of woody stuff if that's the first zapping you did. I'm doing it on my own farm. I'm usually get in them when they're fairly vegetative, but yeah, later in the season, it's definitely less conductivity. Might have to run the voltage up higher to get them or slow down.
Awesome. Perfect. Real quick, this is directed at Mr. Aaron Cooper, but I think Jim could answer this too, just real quick. Do you guys believe the weed zapper alone would be sufficient to control the weeds in the row of the crop? Uh, and do you have any yield loss concerns when you're using the zapper? Do you have any damage to your crop when using it?
Um, I guess for yield loss, I mean, I try not to hit the crop, so no. I zapped some cowpeas this year, and they already put off these runners by the time I got to zap, and I'm a little worried about that, like what I'm doing to the yield on those cowpeas. But I didn't get in early enough before those little runners shot up to the top. So we'll see what happens with those. But as far as controlling weeds in the row, I mean, I have enough weed pressure that I have to be doing tine weeding or something else to do in-row weed control early. So I mean, if your weed pressure was really low, yes, you might, but eventually, well, I mean, I guess if you're controlling it with the zapper and not letting it go to seed, that's one thing. My weed seed bank's too high to not be doing some other in-row weed control early, or or trying to throw dirt up in the row with a row crop cultivator too. So,
How about you, Jim?
No, that is not enough to control the weeds. You have to be doing a bunch of other stuff.
Perfect. It's not a silver bullet, as we say. Awesome. All right. So I think we touched on it a little bit, but in terms of timing, you guys were mentioning later in the season, maybe the last pass, you see lower efficacy as those weeds kind of desiccate down and enter the reproductive stage. But so what's important? What's the most important in regards to timing? Uh, what do you guys recommend for timing of applications?
if you have your own zapper and you're not, I mean, I think custom could be a whole other thing because you can't maybe not afford to get them in twice or whatever. I would say with that, I mean, you try to hit a happy medium for when they come in, and definitely before you have anything setting seed, would be ideal. But I try to get in there knowing that I'm going to be in there at least twice. I'm going to go in early, to keep, to reduce competition with the crop. So I'm gonna get in with that first flush of weeds that's coming out, where it's 6 or 8 inches over the canopy. I'm gonna go in once, then depending, like one field, it wasn't so bad this year, so I was like, this field's not too bad. I'm gonna save it for the second zapping, because the weeds just weren't that many over the canopy and it wasn't that bad. Um, but yeah, so that would be my first pass, and if I was only going to do two passes before I'm getting seed set, I guess. And then since we have Palmer Amaranth, that's an early Palmer Amaranth can set really early. So um, just be glad upper Midwest guys don't have Palmer Amaranth yet. So it's pretty bad.
Yeah, Jim, how about you? Any
Yeah.
recommendations?
So if I'm talking to someone about custom zapping, we're maybe waiting a little longer just to get as many weeds up above the canopy as possible. Again, going back to the idea that, they're a bunch below the canopy, and now a week later, this customer thinks I didn't really do my job. But on my own farm, like variable costs on running this thing are $10 an acre, right? So it's worth an extra pass or two passes. Since I own this thing, all I have to do is go out there and run it for a few hours. So it's well worth the extra pass. Um, Admittedly, if we were drier here right now, I would have been zapping the last 3 days. It seems like around the 15th of July, most years I want to be zapping 15th to the 25th of July, and then somewhere around the 20th of August I want to be zapping again, in an ideal world.
All right. So Eric Voorhees asks, how precise is electrical weeding compared to something like spot spraying or laser? And I think I could answer that. It's basically a broadcast, non-selective application. And I'm not aware of any technologies that are precision electrical weeders at this phase. Are you guys aware of any of that?
No,
And then David Campbell asks, for Aaron, how much is your fuel efficiency reduced when running the Zapper and tractor off the same engine? That's a good question.
I don't know. I've never run it any other way. I mean, I don't have a separate engine, but um, if I had to run two engines, I don't know. That would be a probably a question for Jim, what it's taking to run it. But um, I don't know. I'd say I'm using, it depends on the weed pressure, 2 to 3 gallons an acre, is what kind of what I'm running. Maybe 2.5 on an average, maybe. If you have really bad weeds and it's really loading the tractor down, I would say we're more up there at 3 gallons an acre. But then, the wider the machine you have, I'm sure there's some more efficiency in there. Running 15 feet at a time is, um, you know, fairly inefficient, I guess. But you can use a smaller tractor. So.
Yeah, and with my machine, supposedly it's about 2 gallons an acre, but I think I'm closer to a gallon and a half of diesel per acre and that's having both engines running. So,
Yeah, and just real quick, I think Jim, you mentioned it cost about $10 per acre. Aaron, do you have any estimate of what yours cost to run per acre? I think that's a good thing to let people know.
I've never really done the numbers on it, no, but I know custom rates are pretty high, is what I hear. But I'm not even in that realm because I'm running too small of a machine, really. Too much turn row um traffic on a 15 foot for doing custom, I think.
All right, awesome. And then I'm just going to get this last question. I know we're running long on time, but Dixon asks, do you guys know if there's any effectiveness on seeds stored in the soil and maybe perennial species like purple nutsedge? They have these little nutlets. Do you guys know if electrocution can damage seeds in the soil? And I'll just jump in and say, based on our research, there's no impact on seeds in the soil with our machine. What about you two?
yeah, I don't believe there's any impact.
Yeah,
Yeah, not sure about that.
yeah. But I think that's almost everything. Man, this was a great discussion, and I think some good information. And it's awesome to get to talk to people with thousands of acres of experience using the Weed Zapper. Um, there's still a lot to learn about it. It's a valuable tool for sure, but I think we also pointed out there's no silver bullet. There's still a lot of things that could be improved, and you need to combine tactics, right? You need to combine multiple tactics to maintain season-long control. So. I just want to thank Jim and Aaron and thank our attendees and Emily. If there's any last minute housekeeping things you want to bring up, that'd be great. But thank you all so much and thanks for letting me host today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. That was great. I can't believe how much ground we covered. And it's not even 90 minutes. So I also want to thank the farmers. I know you guys have had a busy summer. You have a lot of overlapping harvests and crop production things to manage this time of year. So we could not do what we're doing at Grow without farmers who are trying new things and are willing to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of them. So we really appreciate it. Again, this has been recorded, so we will be posting a copy of it on the website next year. Next year, hopefully sooner than that, next week. And sending out a link to anybody who was registered. If you have any extra questions, feel free to reach out to me. In fact, let me put my email in the chat really quickly. But otherwise, I think I'm gonna let folks get back to their weeks.